Interesting. So, in the Cartel shop tonight with Tyler, Trent, Nate, they invited us out, talk some turkey, press some calls, all sorts of stuff. Tyler's getting we run the TikTok over there.
Yeah, TikTok
shop.
TikTok live.
Link in the bio.
Yep.
Check it out.
Use the code, get 15% off.
Can't beat that deal, dude.
Mm-mm.
So, yeah. What do you guys want to talk tonight? I know Tyler's got some topics on the latex and stuff like that you guys run in the calls.
Mm-hmm.
Is that windy, man?
Whoops.
I got almost a
Yeah, we can talk about the different types of mouth calls or the different things that impact mouth call sound that are controllable from a call production standpoint. Talk about things that change pot call sounds so that you can understand the fundamentals of what to look for or how to select a call, the different cut types, why calls are cut different ways. Those are just sort of the different things
Is this an Android?
we have questions about all the
I
time.
got one. Why? You need a charger?
I will eventually, but not yet.
Gotcha.
When will my order get here? You get a tracking number, so you can just plug that in. That's another frequently asked question. Where should I go turkey hunting?
In the woods? Where there's
Pick
turkeys?
a field.
Pick a field.
Pick a field. Yeah, so basically fundamentals of what makes a mouth call, and what aspects of the call impact what makes them different and what makes them the same.
Yeah.
I think
So I guess not to get in everybody else's business, but basically throughout the industry, is it kind of like, is there a standard for like I don't know what you want to talk, thickness or stretch with any of their calls, or?
Yeah, they're all basically the same, but they're not. There's things that, like I said, there's a bunch of different factors that impact the call. And so you got to start, at the engine compartment and then work your way around to the options and the transmission and what kind of fuel it runs.
Gotcha.
Oh, yay! But the industry standard is mass production. They'll have a shop where they have multiple people making calls in a sort of like an assembly line. So somebody's stacking latex, somebody's punching frames, somebody's taping frames, or cutting latex off of frames. Somebody's taping them, and then they cut the tape on the die and then package them. But they offer very few different variations because it's hard for them to stock the material.
Right, they're going to have to stock more material, reset machines and stuff like that too for different.
Yeah. So you basically start out with frames back in I guess if you want to look at the history of it, I think in probably the late 70s, early 80s was when the Grand National Calling Championship or the NWTF founded. I don't know what year it founded. I don't know, a couple years ago it was 50 years, so that would have to be early 70s.
Yeah.
And you had pot calls, box calls, nail calls, tube calls. Then,
I've seen the two block call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or chalk on the side of you just had a box call bottom and a piece of chalk. And so it's changed over the years. And then I don't exactly know what company it was, if it was the Roan Brothers or Penn's Woods or somewhere in there, the modern diaphragm came along. Or I think at that time it was just called a diaphragm. And it was just a medium frame call. There's a medium or a large frame, no adhesive, and it was a single piece of latex stretched in there, crimped in, that was cut off. There was no tape. It was just a piece of latex in a frame. And then over the years, the first, I don't know, 5 or 10 guys that won the Grand National Calling Championship over time, it started to evolve, and you had, I think, I'm 99% sure that Paul Buskey patented the multiple reed design in a diaphragm, which those only last for like 17 years or whatever. This is a long time ago.
Right.
And Quaker Boy hired him and brought the patent under Quaker Boy. And from there, the tape got added to the frame. The frame size shrunk along with the multiple sheets of latex. And then that's what you have now called a modern diaphragm.
Right.
And different manufacturers have different frame shapes, some of them have a tail on the back that you can bend the aluminum or whatever's back there to fit your mouth better. Some of them have different tape designs, but they're all, like what we make is your industry standard small frame.
Yep.
Standard
See
frame.
these comments already.
But you have multiple different frame sizes. The youth frame size, which is known as we call them, those are our small frames or micro frames. That's or the regular frame size is like kind of your engine.
Gotcha.
And then there are some other specialty styles like two frame calls where there's two frames that are stacked, stuff like that. But then you start adding the number of reeds and the thickness of the reeds plays a role in how the call sounds or how it runs.
Right.
And then the amount of tension both sideways and back, that plays a role in, which reeds vibrate, if all of them vibrate or just the top reed vibrates. And then you start to cut it and relieve tension on the top reed. Some guys like Josh Grossenbacher cut the center reed too because they believe that adds to the rasp.
Mm-hmm.
But most guys just cut the top sheet. Where the latex is gone, you're going to get a high-pitched squeak, whine, key. Where it remains, but it's cut so it's loose, you're going to get rasp. And where it remains uncut, still under tension, is where you're going to get like the middle tone of your yelp.
Mm-hmm.
Just that regular.
That middle body of it.
Yeah. And then how many reeds there are and how they're staggered is going to dictate kind of how the yelp falls off. If they're tight together, it's all going to be in the top reed, meaning there's not much spacing. The more spacing there is, the longer the fall off is going to be. Or if you just have two reeds with one set way back, then you're kind of using the thin front portion of the call.
Right.
And everybody sort of has a different recipe that's, some guys can use all of them. Some guys can only use a certain portion of them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's always the hardest part about mouth call selection and why guys go in and they feel like they're throwing darts at the board because they're buying a bunch of different they're trying to make trying a bunch of different calls, but they don't really know
why it's not working or why it is.
The biggest thing beyond all of that is that the mouth call is made fresh because the latex is a plant material. It comes from a tree in the southern Pacific Islands, Asia, and they add formic acid to it and it turns it into rubber. And so the thickness, so like what I have here, I just opened it up. It's a thickness gauge. So you put this on your reeds and this is multiple reeds, but you put them in here and it tells you exactly how thick on here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on putting battery in. Exactly how thick the reeds are. So you kind of find that the difference down to 1,000th of an inch or 100,000, tens of thousandths of an inch of how thick that reed is going to play a role in how it sounds, how much tension it needs. But when you're subjecting it to pressure or tension in the frame and then it sits around for a long time, the adhesive in that frame holding the latex starts to slip. The latex itself starts to break down, especially when it's, gets subjected to heat and UV. And so it's not a perishable item in the sense of like a freaking tomato, but it's a perishable item in the sense of like it does have shelf life where,
And call hours too. I mean, you can blow them out or
yeah, I mean,
or if you're not taking care of them pretty much.
Yeah, I mean,
stretch out.
they stretch out over time. You know, it's because it's not synthetic and it's something that's really thin. You know, it's just like sandpaper. You can only sand so much wood with a piece of sandpaper before it's shot.
Yeah.
Now, are there companies that do use synthetic?
We use synthetic. We
guys
use
use
prophylactic, which is synthetic, but it has a different sound than actual real
So
natural
you
latex
use
does.
the, I guess from how I understood it, like a plant-based latex.
Latex, yeah. So latex is plant-based. Prophylactic is synthetic latex, and so there's a mixture of both of those, and it's like a.
And then when you buy a call, well, that's probably labeled on there somewhere. What kind of?
It's they
they
all
put in,
have
right?
real latex and prophylactic.
They all do.
And real latex. So the plant-based latex.
Do you put the latex over the prophylactic?
Yeah, typically the latex like this. So this call is a hydro series, and the blue sheets are real latex. The white sheet is prophylactic, and typically it's that way. It's hard to find real latex that comes in sheets that thin, which are 2.5 thousandths thickness. That's really thin for actual real latex to
And
find.
for 2.5 thousandths, that's actually thinner than your average sheet of copier paper.
Yeah.
Average sheet of copier paper, you're running probably from 3 to 5 thousandths
Yeah.
thickness.
So the natural.
Idea how thin.
Yeah, it holds up.
Actually,
It holds up better in thinner. You know, when it's thinner like that, the synthetic does. But it doesn't have a thicker. When you start to beef it up and you get a thicker sheet of it, it doesn't maintain the acoustic qualities that the latex does. And the part of the call that's getting a lot of the wear is the latex portion. But if you watch like a lot of the calls, if you buy them at the store, and you'll see them like by the second week of the next year, when you pull it out or whatever and you start running it, you'll see the little stress fissures in it.
Or discolorations and stuff.
Yeah, if the call's all prophylactic, it'll have those. If it's just latex and then prophylactic, a lot of times the prophylactic will be the only part that stress fissures like that. It has those little stress cracks in it.
Stress cracks, or I've had them where they actually kind of get like a wave to them, like it almost like stretches out. Because I've had them, I use them for a year, then they just sit in my truck in a tin or whatever. And then when you talk about heat and cold and all that constant stuff with the material, and that will deteriorate it faster. So if you actually didn't keep your mouth call in your truck like I did all year long, and actually kept it in your house in a somewhat steady climate environment, would it actually prolong the life of that mouth call?
Yeah, if you put them in the freezer and stuff, I know that guys do like to do that. For us, it's
Just grab a new one and rip it.
Yeah,
The call
You get enough.
the call will totally lose its pop after that season, whether you try to take care of it perfect or not.
So a mouth call, latex call is usually good for one season, and then you probably should just
Throw it.
throw it out.
Plus,
and get a new one.
I mean,
Make
you
a
won't-
lanyard out of it.
whether it's in climate control or it's in a freezer, refrigerator, or whatever, I mean, you're passing around germs no matter what, and you're keeping germs and growing them on something that went in your mouth. So it's
Bacteria and all sorts of other shit going on.
like, you want to buy another $15 call, or you want to try to use some piece of crap from last year that didn't keep its pop.
Yep.
It's like, come on, let's get with it. Rope wants to hear the good stuff. We're gonna give it to him.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I've been running those hydro series, right, Tyler? That's what I've been running with the 10 cup blue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those run good for me. I think I run a 3 and a 4 reed setup with those.
So what do you think? Because it seems like each individual person that I've hunted with, like you like the hydro series. I know a couple guys that like your guys' ghost cuts and different stuff. Like, what do you think plays into the individual themselves that depends on what kind of cut or what kind of, I guess, layering that it will work for a specific person? So I'm sure you get people talking to you and being like, hey, this is what I've been using. I like to try your guys' stuff. What do you think would be the best option for me, and this was the style call that I like. What do you think like would?
Well, that's what
help
we
you
try to
match
do. We
to
try to ask
people?
as many questions as we can first. You know, they'll come in and they'll be like, well, what's the cool new call? And we'll be like, well, you know, it's this 6-pack or that 5-pack. But in reality, what do you like? What do you typically run? And they'll be like, oh, you know, I run a ghost cutter, I run a bat wing, or, you know, this or that. And I can kind of go off of that. And I'll be like, are you beginner, moderate, expert? Like, what do you think? And they'll be like, they say, I'm a beginner. I like ghost cuts, or I just started and I'm trying to figure out what mouth call to try to learn on and try to figure out what I like. And then you can kind of go off that. If somebody comes in and they're like, ghost cuts are it, man. Ghost cuts are it. I can be like, buy a Red Devil and a Kilo and a Papa Smurf. Boom, 3 calls. See ya.
Mhm.
Guy comes in and he's like, well, I never found one that I actually like. I'm kind of a beginner. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm going to tell him specifically to buy a call collection or a call pack.
Mhm.
He's got to figure out what cut or what stack he likes. So I'm going to set him up with like a Preacher or a Prophet collection, and that'll give him 3 calls that are simple to run, and they're 3 different cuts.
Mhm.
It's like you may not fall in love with all 3 of these calls, but this is going to enable you to at least pick the one out of those 3, and I can start narrowing you down as you learn.
Gotcha. And that's something that like is pretty specific to, you know, small call companies, and like you guys specifically, like having guys pop in the shop and be like, try one of these or run one of these and see, you know, if that's what you're looking for. What's it? Is it, if you like it that it's too hard to blow, or does it kind of feel just right, kind of Goldilocks a little bit for them? And you know, that's what's really nice about you guys and the way that you guys run your calls and stuff like that, and can pick it apart. And you said you've been doing this for over a decade plus now.
Yeah, probably a dozen years.
Mhm.
You know, started out by making mouth calls on a little hand press. I had a rocket hammer and a little Harbor Freight nail, and dude, it was just on a TV tray.
Mhm.
And like Breen tells the story, 2-3 years into that, I couldn't fit another guy in my apartment in March and April.
Yeah.
They just, you know, I'd throw them at them and be like, try this, try that. Just complete simple calls, like no fancy cuts, just no plan to it. I just started out doing it because I wanted to make my own calls.
Right.
I just thought it was cool
Yep.
to make one on a hand press in my own living room and then go out and shoot one with it.
Yep.
Then it got out of hand.
It seems like you guys are doing pretty well with it. Doing all right.
Yeah, we're busy. We're definitely keeping busy.
Cartel killed them all in every state, Tyler. You got a cartel kill in every state.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. So like here, you can see on here like how thick the latex is. Like that's in the 3000s range, where this is prophylactic. It's slightly thinner.
About 1,000.
About 1,000.
About 1,000th off difference, yeah.
And I like that you guys bought Meditoyo. Bought the good stuff.
Got the machinist in here with Nate.
It's like a $600. It's like a $600.
That's what all my measuring equipment is at work. Meditoyo, that's the best stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Best bang for your buck for quality.
Right. Took us long enough to get it.
Yeah. Had a couple comments roll in over on the live
We got all
chat.
these
Ryan O'Neill says, "What's up, boys?"
What's
He was
up,
in here
Ryan?
the other night, right?
Yeah, him and Tracy came over and
Yeah.
played games.
There you go.
Yeah, that's O'Neill outside. You ever seen that outdoor TV show back in the day?
Mhm.
O'Neill Williams. That's what we always say about Ryan O'Neill. That guy used to peddle the
Green egg
CVA and the
smoker.
big green egg.
Oh
The
yeah.
big green egg cooker.
Yeah, those old like charcoal smoker cooker
So
things.
it
Yeah.
really depends on the time of day whether O'Neill's O'Neill inside or he's O'Neill outside. Never.
All right, guys, this is getting ridiculous.
What, this game?
Yeah.
4-0.
And 4 minutes into the first period.
Yeah,
Well, Buffalo getting stomped.
Sabres are getting smoked.
Yeah.
Stomped.
They're getting smashed is what they're getting.
Sean Drake says he needs the easiest call to use that you have.
The easiest to use are the Preacher and the Prophet series. There are all prophylactic calls. They're thin 3-read or 4-reads, and that's what you can really learn how to like deliver your air. There's not many cuts, so you're taking the cut portion out of it, and you're learning how to just make sound on the reads. There's a little bit of cuts, a little bit of tension relief in the cuts, but it's not a whole
gobble on a pot call. Yeah, you do that and let me know how it goes, man. Ryan O'Neill, just stop it.
Had another comment come in from Bo Hunt. He's one of our frequent commenters on the thing. Many parts of New York are experiencing a decline in turkey population. What do you think is the main reason for this decline? Is it predators, lack of nesting, disease, or other factors?
Well, we could talk about this for weeks, but in my way of thinking, it's everybody wants to blame one single thing, and in my head, it's about 200 things, all a certain percentage of it, all coming together as one, and it's making a negative impact on all of it.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about it last time, going up to turkey season, I think we were calling it like death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah,
You know, it was just it's all these different factors and it's different in different areas too.
Yep.
Some areas it's hunting pressure, other areas it could be just, you know, they're ripping out every single hedgerow, dude, to put in that tillable now and stuff in a lot of places. So it's tough, dude.
But the argument that we always have is people want to call turkey poverty all over the United States. What I say about it is everywhere that I have been, that there has been extreme wildlife, but for the most part, deer management on a property. That property doesn't have turkey poverty. So it's like if you're going to cry turkey poverty, if you didn't go out and at least plant a bag of clover, or you didn't, you know, help X, Y, and Z, there's some way to try to make a difference on that, even if it's just go spread clover in one spot of dirt. Is doing something rather than just complaining turkey poverty.
Right.
Like, I manage my property, you manage properties. My property has more turkeys than anybody around me within the 5 miles.
Right.
And that's not by coincidence. It wasn't that way before.
Yeah.
No, I think a lot of it has to do with the perception of what was there and what's not there now, and just overall more in-depth understanding of what's going on, not just where that turkey's been gobbling for the last 20 years of your life, but what's going on around it. Because I know in New York and in a lot of places, maybe not so much now, but definitely when I met Ben like 10 years ago, I could go put a clover plot in somewhere. I'd have every deer and every turkey in that entire valley on my property. The little bit of habitat disturbance coupled with planting something there that they like to eat that's beneficial for them, that you're growing in corrected soil. You know, the turkeys love clover, deer love clover, turkeys eat the bugs and stuff off of it. So, like, if you're doing nothing and the guy a quarter mile down the street goes in, knocks out a bunch of timber, puts in a food plot, or, you know, whatever, does something, puts in a food plot, mows a field that hasn't been mowed, burns a field that hasn't been burned, does something, you know, does a little bit of forest timber stand improvement or something, all of a sudden he's got all the turkeys, and you're sitting there going, I got nothing. And it's got nothing to do with a decline at all. It's just got a localized disappearance.
It pockets it up.
Yeah, and that can also, you know, if you get 4 or 5 guys in an area pitching by a tractor, and they've got 10 different places that they hunt, or 10 different buddies in that area, and they go around, they start putting in a bunch of stuff back in the woods, and you can't see it from the road. Those turkeys you see strutting on the side of the road every year that when you're driving around, you're going, well, they're not there. Well, yeah, they're not. Right. They're not visible to you. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're not there. So I think that there are places in the country where there is a decline in the population of wild turkeys, but notably mostly in places that have turkeys that are subspecies that are more susceptible to stuff like climatic variation, stuff like Rios won't nest on years when it's a drought and stuff like that. You see boom and bust cycles, and that's been going on since the beginning of time. People will sit there and say, there's a turkey. I'm not saying it one way or the other of whether there's more now than there was or there's less now than there was. But what I'm here to tell you is that nobody knows whether there is more or less because nobody's done the science to understand exactly how many there are. There's been it's either 180 or 240,000 turkeys in the state of New York that the NWTF has posted that number on the state of New York. And since I was a little kid looking at the magazines my grandfather got, we haven't gained or lost a turkey, not even a poult. It's been it's either 180 or 240,000, so stay the exact same. There's the technology out there to fly around and see what's there.
Right.
Or at least see what's in areas.
Winter flock size and stuff, yeah.
Compile the data and have an absolute understanding of what's there. And then the one thing that nobody ever talks about that I think has the biggest impact on all avian populations is predatory birds. And nobody anywhere is talking about the boom and the amount of bald eagles.
The hawks and
just the bald eagle population. You introduced and facilitated the growth of apex avian predator species that didn't exist here when they released turkeys in the 1980s. There was 6 mating pairs or something. Now there's
hundreds.
There's raccoons in every brush lot in America. Always has been and always will be. That's not the fact. It's not because trappers went away. Like there wasn't people trapping little areas everywhere. They were getting ones on main farms and stuff, sure, but there's still guys around here like Jamie that are trapping, I don't even know, 100, 200 coyotes a year just himself. And catching all the other incidental stuff in the way. There's still guys out there doing it. Just because you don't see them doesn't mean that they're not there. There's still guys running. Competitive coon hunting still a thing with dogs. There's still competitive coyote hunting and stuff like that. But the most underanalyzed, obviously we have fishers now. We didn't always have those. But the most underanalyzed, under-talked about portion of all of it is avian predator population growth. And here's the other thing. If you go in and you manage all the fur-bearing animals that live there, not that you shouldn't, you should go in there and kill every raccoon that you can find, honestly. But you have predator-prey oscillation, which is a real thing. And it's the fox and the hare, the hare population goes up, fox population follows it. They kill all the hares go down, the foxes follow. Well, if you kill all the fur-bearing species, the avian predator species just fill in the gaps of where the fur bearers disappear, and you can't manage those. So that's where the Atlantic flyway waterfowl population has gone. Like we shot a lot of resident geese, but as far as mallard ducks and other duck species, go down to the lake when it's frozen, watch an ice hole. There's a bald eagle or 7 sitting there just killing every duck that's in that hole. Like there's a reason why. It's not because of overhunting. It's not because of anything. There's obviously habitats disappearing and stuff. Like that's an issue. Fur bearers, they're an issue. Whatever seed coating that they think is messing with the Rio fertility and stuff out in the Midwest, that's obviously an issue. But there's a lot of things that are contributing to it. But what I can promise you is that if you sit around and think too hard about what's making them go away, you're not spending any time doing something to make them stick around. Like take some of that energy and go plant a clover plot or something. All he needs a can of Roundup. And
a lot of guys go to the planting side of it a lot of times. But I tell guys the biggest way that we've increased recruitment is you got to take care of mama and the babies. You got to make nesting cover. The food's great, and they're going to find food. But if you got that nesting cover combined with that predatory management, the good food sources, especially those clover plots for the bugs for the little ones when they're first coming out, that's huge. For
I
those.
see them nest in brassica plots that grow in the next summer that get real tall and stuff all the time.
Yep.
But they respond really well to habitat disturbance, whether that's
Yep.
a little bit of TSI or a little bit of meadow, like planting some worm seeds and grasses,
Yep.
Or you don't even have to plant anything. You can just leave a buffer between the agriculture and the woods so that the small poults have escape cover into something.
Yep.
Like that's all important, just farming it from the creek edge to the road edge isn't really, you have to have buffer zones. That's the Midwest has a lot of turkeys and they have a lot of buffer zones. You ever check trail cameras in June, August, and you run into a mom with those little poults. They're like little quail. They can't really fly completely.
Yep.
They get themselves into that escape cover. Does it save all of them? No. Does it help? Yeah. Like, does it cost you, whatever, 20 bushels of corn? Yeah, you got to assess your priorities. Obviously, the commercial farmers aren't going to pay attention to it, but you're the one in control of the keys to the land, so you have to. There's places where you can make up for
some of the shortcomings that you got around you.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of turkeys in my experience nesting in alfalfa fields, like just walking through alfalfa fields, and the modern day equipment that farmers use and how big it is. You see online a lot of farmers harvesting hay, and they're like, ended up getting a fawn or whatever. You never see anybody talk about, I ran over a pole, or I ended up grabbing this turkey or anything.
They do a lot.
And how much of that actually goes into it, especially with the first and the second cutting of hay, because those poults, as Breen said, they're just tagging behind mom, and ma can run a lot faster than them to get out of trouble, and ma's gonna take care of ma first. I mean, it's just it is what it is, and a lot of times I think the size of that equipment just really eliminates the chances of
it's fast speed also.
Yeah.
We're not running hay binds anymore in third gear. We're running disc binds in eighth gear. We're going
Choppers.
15 miles an hour.
Yeah,
we're ripping.
Choppers.
And the first thing that hen does with something coming fast is she lays down. If you were going along slow, you got a way better chance of her flying up and getting away. But when you're ripping like that and she sees that coming, her natural thing is to squat. She ends up going through a disc bind.
Yep. Like we said, I think I said death by 1,000 cuts, but the avian thing, I mean, that's a huge point. That's where having that mixed TSI cut cover and stuff like that you can have, next to one of the favorite things that I like to do for turkey management is cornfields going fallow and like flip flopping them every couple of years on a plot that way, because you get those native forbs, you get a lot of insects in those, you get those little spiders or whatever they are, those freaking spiders you always get in the corn stubble every year. The freaking turkeys eat the shit out of those, dude.
They're in there all the time.
All the time.
I don't know why you never hear anybody talk about avian predation, but just when I was really starting to photograph back in the day, Trent would drop me off down at Canandaigua Lake in the ice holes, and I'd photograph the redheads. And I would sit there and I would the bald eagles just nonstop just ravaged all of the waterfowl that was in those holes. And because they can't,
That's
it's like
easy
shooting
pickings.
fish in a barrel.
In the barrel, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's easy pickings on it, man.
And one thing leads to another. I mean, if you see eagles flying around during turkey season, like I've seen longbeards strutting in the field and they see the shadow and they're freaking gone. And
Oh yeah, dude. Even if it's a vulture, I've seen them clear out of the field. They see a vulture shadow over top because it's avian overhead.
And animals don't run from things that they're not scared of or haven't had negative consequences of. One thing leads to the other. Eventually, they're getting harassed or they've had a negative experience with something airborne that causes them to leave. So, the other thing that nobody talks about hardly is like everybody's so quick to point the finger at it's because this guy cut that tree down. there's not turkeys here. It's always your fault. It's never my fault. And I'll be the first person to tell you that we travel around, you see longbeards with hens all the way up until when we're hunting in Maine in June, that's taught us more about how turkeys breed, the breeding cycle, and how turkeys operate more than anything. And you see large bachelor flocks of turkeys, longbeards, jakes, longbeards specifically, jakes specifically, intermixed, some Jenny hens in there. And all the hens are incubating. And I think that if you started the season later to the point of where you're hunting turkeys when the hens are incubating, they've been bred, they've laid their eggs, and they're sort of out of the picture, that you experience a lot better hatch, a lot better reproductive fecundity, if you want to use a scientific word.
Yep.
Because when you go in, those turkeys right now, while we're sitting here, all winter, fall, spring, when they're not breeding, that flock is a constant fluid entity that's establishing a pretty strict hierarchy of how the flock operates.
Yep. That's why they call it a pecking order, man.
Yeah, and when you take a bird out of the pecking order at any level, but especially an adult bird that's in the breeding portion of the pecking order, you change all that, and it takes sometimes hours, sometimes days, weeks, months for that to reassort itself and for the breeding of the hens to start to continue again. And in a lot of cases, the turkey season is just too early. So like before the hens even, she might be bred, but she might not be laying eggs or whatever. She might have a failed, she might get her clutch rated or whatever and have to rebreed. And she might have to wait 2 weeks because the breeding order or the pecking order is a shit show because you went in there and shot a couple turkeys. She's got to wait. And this is what the research shows in a roundabout way. What I'm explaining is you see the gobbling frequency, depression. You see all these other things when you start taking turkeys out of the pecking order. You see it because the status quo between the longbeards, the jakes, and everybody together, like they don't want to say anything. Somebody's coming to beat their ass. They haven't figured it out yet. Somebody's not actively, they can't go on with the show like they normally do.
Right.
Those hens take a lot longer to get rebred. Then you run into issues where you're hatching, they get it figured out, but they don't get it figured out till June, July, once turkey season's done. And then you got hens hatching poults in like August. I don't know if that's directly related to it, but I'm just saying,
right,
you're going into the middle of into a very, very particular thing. You're going in the middle of a very particular thing, and you're just completely interrupting the whole show. And so turkey hunters are very quick to point it out to be this or that, the other thing, but you're going in the middle of a wild turkey's breeding cycle and you're just making a fucking mess out of it.
Yeah. No,
and
because that's the thing, dude. Like my birds are laying right now. My turkeys that we got. Yeah, they're laying. We're getting that one. She's a little slut. She's freaking muddy as shit.
But are they laying in an enclosed, like a heated? No, they're just.
No, I got a small little homemade nest box that they just lay in. All it is a pallet that I straw, and actually I haven't even strawed it yet this year. I straw it, and then I do a lean-to of plywood over the top of it, and they're starting to lay it. I'm pulling them out because we eat them, but they're laying already. And I've seen people putting online that birds are getting bred right now, and I'm not surprised with the temperatures and stuff.
But the thing is like you have all these, they're talking about predatory impact on the nesting and stuff. Well, they'll re-nest, but if they go to re-nest and they can't get bred again, then you start running into, they can't bounce back
right
quick enough. And then you start compounding a bunch of factors on there. Then you take places like Missouri where they say, well, you can shoot one turkey now, but then you got to wait 2 weeks to shoot another one. So you just let it bounce back and then mess it all up again. I don't really know if that's so much the answer. Just go and shoot two and then just leave it alone. If it would have, a better outcome.
Right.
Like you hear a lot of guys talk about leaving turkeys, gobbling or leaving seed there too. Like, if you are running trail cameras, there's 2 longbeards on this farm. If you go and shoot both of them, you pretty much count out a poult hatch there.
Right.
Or
No,
as
we
good
had
of
that.
one as there should be.
Yeah, we had that for a couple of years where we were only shooting multiples. So we let longbeards slide unless we had multiple longbeards that we were calling in.
Yeah.
And the in those situations, the solo birds were always quiet. They were never, because they were outnumbered. Even you get a couple 2-year-olds in there, they'll kick a 3-4-year-old bird's ass. Just numbers game.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I found with having my own turkeys is if you let her go to nest to the point where she's incubating, her body's shut down. She's not making more eggs. So she's got to actually reset her clock before she can start laying viable eggs again. It's not like she can just keep spitting eggs out. Once they're sitting, their body changes and they shut that off.
Yeah.
Because they're going into preservation mode where they're not spending calories to make eggs. They're spending calories to keep warm and then to keep those eggs viable to hatch. So once you have a hen that sits it, she won't lay anymore. Once she starts incubating that clutch.
But if she's incubating that clutch and loses it, will she get bred again and lay another clutch eventually that year?
But you have to wait for that. So
Yeah.
the eggs, if you've ever shot a bearded hen, which probably about 15 years ago now, a guy I know shot one. The eggs, if you ever breast out a hen, they're in different stages.
Yeah.
It's like daily stages. So to get that first egg, we'll just call it 7 to 8 days. So if her body resets when she loses that nest and her brain can switch that over, her body can switch that over, you're looking at almost 10 days before she can lay the first egg. And then they're only laying like one a day or one maybe every other day. So by the time she might assemble a clutch again, you might be 3 weeks down the road from when she lost her clutch. So that also, like you said, slides it from they're sitting in end of May, maybe June to July, and then it starts sliding out even further. And that's why you get small poults. We've had some favorable winters, so our poult survivability has kind of stayed pretty decent, but you get a rough winter, dude. Like we got back in like 14 and 15 in those years. It was freaking hell, dude. Freaking that cold and that deep snow. That's hell on turkeys. They got no, it's hard for them to feed.
And we had some dry summers. That's the big thing.
Yeah, no bugs, no insects.
So
and those green fields and stuff like that. Yeah,
you're at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Always.
But I know that you can watch it through the season. You can see the turkeys, just like you can see bucks in the rut. You can see it have. There's almost daily shifts of where you'll have a gobbler. Like I know if you go down opening day in Alabama, you got a adult male gobbler and he hits the ground and he goes quiet. And if you go up there and actually see what's going on, there's 40 or 50 hens with him. And you mean to tell me that it's not too early? Like, if you waited 2 weeks until those hens were laying on a nest, you'd be in a way better hunting situation, and you'd be impacting a lot less of what's going on. And the turkeys, as much as the guys from Alabama or down, not just Alabama, I'm not just picking on Alabama, but
because that's open right now, right? Alabama, I think, is open.
Yeah, the Southerners will say like, "Oh, well, by May they're gobbled out," and it's like, well. I mean, were you there to listen? No.
Or you just burnt out and not hunting, or the season's not even going anymore.
The season's not even open, and you're back to your day job, and you don't really know what's going on. But they open in Maine. They open earlier than we open here in Maine.
It depends on where the Saturday ends, but some years it can be April 28th to June 6th.
No.
And the best time to hunt them is, as we always say, it's the first week of June. It's when things are actually waiting to happen. You'll hear a bird 1,000 yards away. He'll be in your lap in 10 minutes. Yeah. But he wouldn't have done that 4 weeks ago.
No, because he
had 20 hens.
Yeah, he was working up girls the whole time. And
But the other thing that goes back into all this is guys don't ever think about this fact right here. What game bird do you hunt in the breeding season of the game bird?
Nothing.
Nothing other than the wild turkey. It's a whole different thing in itself. And I never hear anybody talk about that. You don't hunt pheasants, grouse.
Woodcock.
You don't hunt woodcock,
Ducks.
nothing. Ducks, geese, none of that during the breeding season. This is a whole different realm and a whole different section of things.
Like if you got a duck call and a swimming pool, you can go out and call in a Drake mallard right now. He'll come from Canisius Lake. And
Headed to
land,
Bama right now.
and land in the swimming pool looking for the hen that's quacking.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing as calling in a turkey to a hen call this time of the year. But the fact of it is like, imagine if you just started shooting ducks wholesale in the springtime. Like, what's the
outcome? Yeah.
But you also got to think about it as so I'm talking about turkeys. You're hunting them in the breeding season. You're hunting nothing else really in the breeding season except for say whitetails. Well, whitetails are a 24/7 animal.
Every male deer can inseminate a doe
Any hour of the day.
Imagine if you were hunting whitetail bucks during the rut and they only move during the day. Tell me what would happen.
Yeah. If they had to go sleep on the limb at night.
If they had to go to sleep all night and they could only move during the day, what would happen? A lot more of them would get killed. So that always takes me back into the real way to hunt turkeys is in the fall. That's the original way. Way before spring seasons ever happened. And I've always been a fall hunting fanatic. And then you get all into that talk of people want to stop fall season and all of this and all of that. But that's the real way and the original way to hunt turkeys. And I always loved it because it had nothing to do with a breeding cycle.
Yeah.
It was you're 100% hunting a bird that only wanted to survive and eat.
Yep.
He wanted to roost and he wanted to eat. And that was it.
Yep.
And you took that whole thing of the breeding out.
But they still gobble.
Oh yeah, they still ripping.
But
They still rip in the fall, dude.
There would be,
but it's not the same kind of rip. It's not like they're gobbling for the hens. They're gobbling for pecking order because that's still being established year round. So
but give it 10 years of the whitetail buck not being able to see or smell at night and only move during the day, and then tell me what the Boone and Crockett buck looks like then.
Yeah, what it would look like. Absolutely.
The thing about it too, though, is even in the springtime, the untrained guy that just goes turkey hunting, no fault to his own, thinks the turkey's always gobbling at the hens. And I'd say more times than not, the reason why a turkey's gobbling is he's gobbling at another male turkey gobbling or drumming. Or what. He's gobbling at hens, but a lot of times, I would say probably more times than not, he's gobbling at another gobbler. And not so much a hen. So it's the same thing in the fall. They're gobbling to the other gobblers, but it's a different type of gobbling. You can start to learn and hear the different types of gobbles. They're different. They mean different things.
Right.
But they definitely, you learn stuff like that fall hunting that you wouldn't learn just.
And just the flock talk you get in the fall, dude. Like people are like, you hear a hen just get mouthy, whether she's being aggressive. Because she's the head, the head hen in the pecking order, and you're getting into where she's probably nesting and has that kind of turf staked out for good nesting habitat, But you get into the fall, dude, and it sounds like white noise in a fucking city almost with a bunch of birds. Like there's so many nuanced calls and different tones and stuff that people just never hear. I've never killed a bird in the fall actually, just because we haven't had that population, and I like to try to keep some of the males in the population and the blocks of woods that I can hunt with turkeys. And they don't usually fall on us for whatever reason. I don't know if it's a thermal cover thing or what it is.
They definitely range.
Yep. And it's super large ranges, dude. Like you'll see them, on one side of the country block, and then 2 days later they'll be on the other side of the country block. And it's food specific, especially in the fall, going into that winter time.
Wherever the mast is.
Yep. Standing grain fields. If you got to stand in grain field that one year, dude, that was like freaking like ants, dude. It was insane. The field got too wet right around harvest time. They buried the combine. They never got back in there to pull it out. And 40 acres of standing corn. Where the hell do you think 80 birds were that winter?
Yeah, we got
all winter.
A lot all winter agriculture now than we had back in the day.
Yep.
That's why they said that the pheasants disappeared.
But that rabbit hole of the season dates and all that can just go forever, man. Like as far as I'm concerned, anything that has any human influence in it is going to be messed up one way or the other.
Yep.
So in season dates, what do you got? You got DNR, you got hunters, then you got lifetime hunters, serious hunters that are part of that whole habitat management. You got to fight them, all three of those.
Yep.
You got hunters that are putting on their hunter review that they get in the mail. I want to hear gobbles.
Yep.
That's usually the biggest answer of what do you want during spring turkey season? I want gobbles. Where are you going to get the most gobbles? You're going to get it in the breeding peak.
Yeah.
But in reality, we should be hunting them after they've done most of their breeding, which wouldn't be a gobbling peak. It would be later on. You would get one gobbling peak. It'd be less gobbling, but it would be more by themselves, more running to a call.
Yep.
So you're getting like that argument of, I want more gobbles, but that's kind of leading you away from being able to shoot more adult gobblers. It's kind of that double-sided sword. It's like, what do you want? I fill out that review. I want late season hunting. I want to be able to hunt later. But me putting that in there, I feel like is a waste of time, but I still do. It's a waste of time because I'm probably 2 out of 1,000 guys that are actually putting that. Everybody wants it earlier. We've heard it for years in New York. The season's too late. It just started on April 15th, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, they're so visual at that point of the year that everybody thinks that would lead to increased success.
Yep.
Versus the late season. And late season, it is different hunting, like you said. And that's where it goes back to your woodsmanship, your scouting. Where they start to almost shift a little bit seasonally versus April versus where they're roosting first week of season, where they're roosting last week of season.
Bugs, heat, and foliage. But give me like May 12th to June 12th. Or give me May 15th to June 5th.
Yep.
And leave it at the 2 birds, 2 adult gobblers.
Yep.
But make it later. Like even a lot of years when we have a late winter that goes into April, you're still hunting, flocks of 20 birds sometimes that May 1st.
Yep.
And they're not even near figuring out everything that they need to figure out and splitting up and going into their usual spring breeding area. It messes them up pretty bad once you get those flocks in and you take 2 or 3 adult gobblers out of there and they got to refigure it out before the hens are trying to nest.
This one's trying to bounce over to that, tri-corner where they roost or that woodlot ridge where they roost. And, then there's no bird in there. And you're like, well, where the heck did he go? Well, he got killed first week of season. And now the hens aren't relating to that either because people don't realize this either. But gobbler gobbles, hen goes to gobbler. Like we're reversing nature by trying to bring bird to us. So basically, if you got no gobbler there, you got no girls there, you can almost not have birds on your piece just because you don't have a gobbler there anymore. So, and then if they're resident birds and they're not, if they're already kind of in their region that they live in, that's why I don't think a lot of hens get bred almost now too, is like you said, the gobbler gets killed first thing and there's nothing to breed them. And those girls, like I had a group a couple years ago up on the one border of ours, dude. I called in like 6 hens last week of season. No gobblers, no jakes, no nothing, dude. Called in 5 hens. None of them are sitting nests. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. They'd be back on nest, at least laying one or hanging out near it or tending it or whatever they were doing. But calling in like 5, 6 hens last week of season, dude, something ain't right.
Yeah, they're running around looking for friends. Isn't a good sign.
No, because their bodies have already gotten off of the thing, or they just never had a Tom or anybody breed them. Where they lost their eggs and they're all hanging out together, clutch mates. Maybe it was a big clutch of Jenny hens that were all together too. It's tough to say.
They also, if you look at the data that Chamberlain has published, is that like 2% of hens do 90% of have 90% of the successful nests year to year, like on a historic basis. So like just having hens doesn't necessarily mean you've got the hens.
Yep. Right.
That have figured out a way to, make it out unscathed from all the other stuff.
There's a comment on here. May 15th to June 15th would be epic. It would be smashed.
Yeah. You get that early breed out of the way.
You're going to get 1,000 people on there saying, well, they're gobbled out. Dude, you tell me that by that time
I've
of
had
year,
birds ripping the last day of season just like it was the first day of May.
but by that time of year, it's getting light so early. There's nobody out there but my shot ass listening to them on the roost after the season ends.
Yeah.
Listening to them gobble at 4:27 in the morning because it's cracking daylight that late or that early, that late into the season.
Yeah.
But everybody will tell you they're gobbled out. Dude, you didn't even have your coffee and you ain't even out your door till 6:30 in the morning. Those birds are already 2 hours into their day.
Yeah.
They've already flew down, got together, did their thing.
Yeah.
Their peak was 2 hours ago, but I'm shot and I'm sitting there listening to see who lived and who didn't and
Right.
how good they're going in June.
No. And I think a lot of times too, and I've noticed this, I don't know if it's directly related to this, but I've heard some people say that hunting pressure also decreases gobbling in a neighborhood. You know, they almost get a little gobble shy or whatever. But I think more to the point with that, like we were talking, is the dominant bird gets killed out of the area, you know,
one of the birds gets
or
killed.
one of the birds gets killed out of the area, and they don't know where, you know, Tyler was or whatever. They don't know where he's at anymore. We're not hearing him, but we're not gobbling either.
Yeah.
You know, there's that hierarchy is screwed up.
And you get into areas and you really pay attention. And if there's a lot of jakes in the area, a gobbler won't gobble because as soon as he does, a bunch of jakes are running in there to beat his ass and mess with him.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was hunting with Cody McIntyre last year in New Hampshire, and I'm not trying to throw him under the bus because he knows what he's doing, but we had roosted it was a pair of longbeards, 2 hens, and 2 jakes. I roosted them, and we went there the next morning, and I didn't know exactly where they roosted, but I knew kind of where they were going to go. We ended up not killing them, but as soon as there was 2 different groups of turkeys gobbling, I was like, there's jakes in here. And as soon as the gobblers hit the ground, those jakes were in between us and the gobbler wouldn't come because of the jakes. The gobbler would have herded his hens over there, no problem, but those jakes were messing with them, and they went, the 2 longbeards and 2 hens skirted by us, and Cody's like, oh, they're henned up, and I'm like, there's 2 jakes here that are running them down like a couple of bad dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And so like sometimes that impression that it's the hens that are screwing everything up like isn't necessarily completely accurate. Like
right.
You can watch in really high density flock areas, you'll see a gobbler coming to you know, in Merriam flocks and stuff where you can see 200 or 300 turkeys where you're sitting trying to call one in and shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see how they all maneuver around, and this gobbler will start to come and the jakes will be like, no, and cut them off. And, you know, it takes hours sometimes for them to really orient themselves in the right way to be able
slink
to
off or whatever.
Yeah. Like a running back finding a hole in the defensive line to get over there to see what's up.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take the hens and everything, you know, they're incubating and get later in the season like that, and the hierarchy is completely established. You see more free flow and fluidity amongst that flock. When it's a free for all, you know, mosh pit,
Mm-hmm.
you don't see as much gobbling and coming to calling or as much gobbling because you have other unforeseen factors in the way, like jakes and you know, just everything else that's going on. It might not be they're gobbled out, it might be that they're concussed and they're not wanting to get beat up again.
Yeah,
it's just the way that it goes.
That old excuse that's still used every day to this day of they're henned up is absolute baloney.
oh, we've called
It's
them with
fact.
that before. Yeah,
It's fact, but it's not a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want to cry turkey poverty, you want that gobbler to be with 20 hens. That's his job. Like, don't sit against a tree and call to him and think of that as a negative thing. That's exactly what we want. We want that gobbler to have a fat flock of hens. Always henned up. I'm going to breakfast. I'm going to Waffle House. Dude, you just got to completely change your whole way of thinking in it. You got to call to the lead hen and you got to get out in front of them and you'll kill that gobbler just the same as you would have before, but you got to completely change your way of thinking of it.
Right. You got to hunt them on the woodsmanship, or you're going to have to work that hen or whatever situation you are. I mean, there are a million different situations with it, but
You're playing the true spring game.
yeah, you're beating him when he's
You're
when he's not lonely, and
you get that perfect spoon-fed hunt where a lone longbeard comes in from a mile away. But in all reality, that's a rarity compared to a gobbler with hens during the spring, and that's what you want. That excuse of they're henned up, that just gets old with me.
Right.
It's like they're supposed to
and that's
be.
the other thing where the hens took them the other way. No, they just had a water hole they had to go get a drink out of this morning, or a field they wanted to go bug in or sun in and preen in this morning. Like it has nothing to do with where you're calling from, and the hens are like, I'm not going to take him over there. Turkeys don't think that way.
No, you were calling from somewhere that the turkeys don't normally go, where turkeys normally aren't.
Yep.
There is a billion more things going on with those birds and what they do and where they are and what they see and how they hear. A billion more things going on than any of us know about, including me. I sit there and I watch those things year round. Like the flock across the road from my house, I've been watching them for 6 months.
Yeah.
Those things do a bunch of stuff that nobody would ever see except me, because I sit a mile away with a 60 power spot and scope and I watch them on the next hill over on the ridge. And what people portray is actually going on and what is really going on is two completely different things. It's just you can't change law or change the sway of things when you don't have the information, like Tyler says. There's not enough information or biology work done for the wild turkey to do half the things that people want us to do for them.
Right.
And what we're saying is somebody needs to go forward and come up with some answers of some questions that are not asked.
Yep.
And with that information, then you can go from there.
Yep.
But I can't sit here and say, the wild fisher or, the eagle or, the seed. Yep. There's no specific problem with the turkey population. It's 200 things, all different percentages that are all swaying into the ending of what the population really is.
Well, that kind of goes for any kind of game. I mean, every kind of wildlife has its challenges throughout its life. It's daily challenges it has to get around to survive, or anything like that. I mean, it's the same with whitetails. It's the same with coyotes. It's the same. It was a funny thing that we talked about a couple episodes ago was people complaining about the coyote numbers being high. Well, if you have high coyote numbers, it means you have a high amount of prey in that area. They don't just breed and sustain a pack or whatever in a certain area by not having a food source for them to actually
feed on
and survive on.
Yep.
So if you have a high predator population, you have a high prey population of some sort, whether it's whitetail, whether it's rabbit, whether it's whatever these predators are actually feeding on. It's a little different way of looking at it, instead of saying, well, I'm not seeing any deer because we have, I saw a pack of 12 coyotes running across this field or whatever. Well, that land is sustaining those 12 coyotes. That means they're eating something. There's what you're after is probably the same thing they're after, yes. But maybe the person needs to change their mindset on how they're actually approaching their attack and on their hunt, and how their woodsmanship and different things like that to have better success.
The other thing is like the data, as far as I understand, shows that as far as the predatory success of different predatory animals on wild turkeys, the coyotes are like the least factor of all of it. It's cats and possums.
I heard bobcats
skunks.
are probably percentage-wise one of the highest.
Like they
detriments to
kill turkeys, I'm sure, but the avian problem, the other fur-bearing animals are more likely a lot higher.
Kitty cats are good killers. There's no doubt.
They're more responsible for that. But that's the other thing, is like you got to understand the most efficient predator of the wild turkey is us.
Yeah.
by far. So
Yep.
you just have to look at yourself sometimes and
Mhm.
say, this is, you can't always take what, the game agency, the biologists, they know what they're talking about. But you also always have to think about it for yourself and understand, like, you can only teach or understand from somebody else so much. You have to understand it yourself too and look at it and say, like, well, why is this the way that it is?
Yeah.
And going back to what you guys were saying and stuff we talk about with the whitetails is the human impact and us being the biggest predator to wild turkeys. Probably even whitetails. I haven't looked at those numbers, but and when a human goes into an area and disrupts it or changes it or does anything to it, it's affecting that wildlife in a way. So as hunters, if you do want to be more successful, you need to learn, the game that you're chasing, and you need to try and better the habitat for that specific species, whether it's turkeys, whitetails. And I think a lot of turkeys and whitetail habitat kind of go together a little bit in a way. And then not only just property management and habitat management or habitat improvement, but just being a responsible hunter. Don't go out there and just you shoot $5 or shoot like you get 6 deer that come out on your property, and that season you got 3 guys that hunt it and all of them shoot 2 deer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, well, where are you going to be next year?
Yeah.
You kind of got to be smart about it with everything you're doing. If you want to sustain this hobby and something that you love doing, just kind of do what nature has kind of intended. Just kind of try to take what you need. Don't let the greed part or the social media post part like really take over the your thoughts on what you're trying to do out there.
I mean, if you're doing something like that, though, like, you got to understand that you have to allocate into your, like, if you're shooting something, taking a picture of it, cleaning and going through all those steps, going out and seeding some freaking natural cover in or something like that is part of your regimen of it's all part of the business.
Mhm.
It's like running a business and not filing taxes. You have to do all the steps for it to be successful. You can't just do the glorious end or whatever. Like, and if you do the stuff, the back end stuff, and you build a rigid framework there for success and you maintain that, then the cream that rises to the top is going to be thicker because you did everything else better.
Right.
And you have to do it for the love of the entire process, just not the results. It's about how you get to the results. That's what really matters.
Right.
I don't know anybody that's gone and planted a deer plot that at some point haven't had turkeys in there also along with it.
Yep.
Like, it's just, they're sort of, in the Midwest are an annoyance more or less because they're so rampant, and you have to give back. You have to do something. I've been after the guys that do the hunter education course for years, the guys at the upper echelon that write the booklets and stuff, and they determine what the criteria for the course is going to be to put something in there about habitat management and at least helping people understand that manipulating your habitat is going to make you a more successful hunter, but it's also going to long-term bring you more enjoyment, more involvement in the outdoors. Just doing something small is going to pay big dividends.
Right.
Well,
Colin Fox says they're still call shy.
Yeah.
Drive around and call at him out the window all day, man.
Yeah.
Right now.
We've said it numerous times. It's like, yeah, this is probably a difficult one to hit, but if a 12-year-old kid goes and he passes his hunter ed, as soon as he passes that hunter ed, here you go. Here's a 10-pound bag of clover donated from Old Tin Cup Restoration or whatever.
Yep.
This is what you do with this clover seed, and this is when you plant it.
Yep.
Here you go. I guarantee more than 3/4 of those bags of clover will be planted somewhere or tried
Yep.
He at least tried to
Yeah.
get them to germinate.
No, 100%, dude. 100%. And again, they do that with the seed subsidy programs for NWTF and National Deer Association. They do the seed subsidy program so people can get access to seed at a
Sign
cheaper,
the
more.
Contract.
Yep, just that it's not going to be harvested. That's
Yep. Boom. I sign it every year.
Mhm.
So they just at the latest banquet we were at, we're talking about this new NWTF Northeastern Initiative or whatever.
it. I haven't heard about that. What's going on with that?
Sean says that there's a biologist that if you want more turkeys on your property or want to know what you can do to improve your property, you got to call the guy and he'll come out and look at your property and see
So it was like that young forest specialist that QDMA had for a couple years before the funding dried up with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I don't know how beneficial that is, but
Yeah.
it's.
And I'm always down for a fresh set of eyes, dude, on something. Even something that I'm doing or whatever. And that's why me and my dad bounce stuff off of it. Nate comes out bouncing stuff off of it and looks at it. And it's just that different lens, dude, that somebody can put on and look at it with it. You're like, well, you're doing this, but why don't you just tweak it a little bit like that? And it's just like, yeah, we could play that a little bit.
It's almost like having a second set of eyes on a blood trail.
Yeah,
Sometimes
that too.
It helps out.
Dave,
a lot.
are you watching us on live? Are you?
Double tap
Live in the studio.
Dusty Townsend wants to join.
Dusty Leatherworks.
So this was actually a good turkey question. I don't know if that's something you guys could speak to with this. Came in on the chat line over on our page. Do you tend to see turkeys staying in one primary location, or do you tend to see them travel from spot to spot throughout a season, like travel from property to property?
Well, yeah.
That all depends on the time of season. Like,
Property size.
like in New York, that month of March, boy, he's traveling. He's with the flock, or he might break off and he's going hill to hill, trying to figure out where he's going to spend his spring. Or you get those flocks that they're already in the block of woods all winter long.
Yeah, just because of the habitat and stuff. Yeah.
Like at home around me, it's the pine line, I call it. The big bunches of pines are all about a mile down the road. I can literally see them down the ridge from my living room. That's where they all winter. As soon as you get a break in the weather and you start seeing turkeys around my road, you'll know that they're thinking it's spring. Because about that March time, February sometimes, they migrate from that mile. And I can literally see probably 3/4 of a mile down the valley in cut corn usually.
This is legit. You'll watch them walk. When
you watch them things,
they would walk north past the house.
Yep, they'll
Never
come all the way to the road,
before, again, or after.
cross, keep going north, they disappear. And in that bunch of pines down there, it's a huge gully. It's perfect when the snow's on. There's barely any snow on the ground. There's so many pine trees in that block. Once they make it down to me, I know that it's about time. But they've really only traveled about a mile. But
how many properties are in between that mile? You know what I mean?
10.
Yeah, exactly.
But I can see the trees that they were roosted in a mile away. And now they're across the street and they're behind my house, and that's where they spring.
Right. And I've seen seasonal shifts for birds too. Like it might be one ridge to a different ridge based on species composition of the woods. And I think it also, and the more I think about it and look into it, I think it's proximity to nesting habitat. That gobblers are shifting closer to nesting habitat later in the season because that's where they're going to drum a hen up quickly, breeder, get their opportunity to breed to pass on their genes, and she's going to go back to nest.
Yep.
Whereas in that early season, he might just be at a projection point, someplace where he might be on the tallest ridge in the neighborhood calling.
Yeah.
And then he'll shift closer to nesting cover.
Yeah,
You'll see him late season, man. There'll be a shift when those hens go into incubating, and he'll do nothing but spend his entire day after he flies down going around to where he knows every single one of those hens is nested, and he'll try to drum her up off the nesting breeder.
Yep.
Like it's kind of off the subject, but once me and Tyler became buddies a long time ago, it's way different hunting compared to up here to down at my house. Just in the sense of the rolling mountains and just the way that the blocks of woods are set up. Like the blocks of woods down by my house, they can be 5 miles long on one ridge.
Yep.
Up here, it's a postage stamp.
Yeah.
You know, in
It's a
between
square
4
block
roads.
field, and that's
Like I'd take Tyler down there and it'd be like, okay, we'd hunt my property. We'd hear turkeys in my block across the street where we're saying they come from. And then across the valley on the next ridge, which would be, they call it Corey Gully, there'd be birds gobbling in Corey Gully. And that's all you'd hear. Then I'd take Tyler within sight of my house, which I'm saying, 3/4 of a mile down the road. And you could hear 2 other flocks of birds. But every single one of those flocks of birds can hear one another.
Yep.
Like, no problem. We just can't.
Yep.
So it's like you can hear the same flock of turkeys from my house, but once you get down and you go close enough to those birds on the roost, you can hear the next flock and the one across the ridge that you can't hear from my house.
And they're hearing each other, just we can't hear.
And that all goes back into that mess up of when you start killing birds, and it completely changes what's going on for sound down that whole ridge.
It's not just changing what's happening. At that point, it's like here you got Honey Falls and you got Lima. It's not just changing what's happening in my house, Honey Falls. It's changing shit going on in Lima.
Yep.
You name it. Like, because they can all hear each other and they're all in the same wintering flock. They can all hear each other.
But it just hit my mind, that listener asking about gobblers moving around. We had this gobbler, remember with Jim? Sawtooth? Remember hearing about him? Sawtooth was like a legendary gobbler around my whole area. And you couldn't miss him because he had those center tail feathers that were just the ones were left, the front ones in front of the actual big tail feathers. So it just had the middle missing. So we called him Sawtooth. Like it looked like a damn chainsaw blade, So everybody talked about Sawtooth. So I kept an eye on him with a spotting scope. And that thing in the month of May, he went about, I'd say, a 2.5 mile circle. And he would go from pretty much the west, and he'd go through my block, and he'd go over to the east, and he'd disappear, and I wouldn't see anything of him for a week, couldn't find him. Then a week, boom, he was down that ridge where the pines are, breeding hens down there. And then he'd be all the way back to Point A where he started on the west. And then my buddy ended up killing him, and that was the end of the legend of Sawtooth.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool watching him go around because it was one specific bird that you could tell who he was.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure that they're just like deer, dude. You get different individuals. You got some deer that are homebodies, and then some are just
personalities.
Yep.
Like we shot 2 bands this year in Maine, and the same day, and both those birds were about, I don't know what, maybe a half mile apart from each other where we shot them.
Probably a little more than that, but.
And then they were banded right there. When I talked to the guy that banded them, they were banded. His was shot. He shot his closer to where they were banded at than I did, but they were still within, a mile or so.
Completely different ends of the spectrum for personality.
One was with a bunch of turkeys.
His Longbeard was with a bunch of jakes and a bunch of hens, gobbled and hammered and just smashed it. Mine couldn't find a turkey anywhere near him, barely within hearing distance, was never with another turkey, watched him for 2 days, never gobbled, never strutted, never nothing, just completely stayed out on his own. And it was just complete different ends of the spectrum. But the thing that brought them together was that beautiful medal on their leg. Made them brothers.
Yep.
And
they all go into the same place.
They were banded in the same exact location a day apart. So they were rocket netted on the same place on planet Earth, but a day apart or 2 days apart from each other that January. So the one I killed, he said, was banded with some other adult gobblers or Jake and a halves or whatever they were. Not Jakes, but
that transitional 2-year-old bird
or older. I don't really know.
That 3/4 inch nub.
That one that he
half-inch
killed
nub
was rocket netted by itself, so it was like spending its time by itself.
He wanted nothing to do with spring.
Or any
That's why he tweaked my interest even more. I love those turkeys. They're hard to hunt. They're hard to hunt.
He was a
especially if he's like not talking either.
Nothing. No strut, no drum, no nothing. Just walk around and pick and stand there with his telescoping head looking around for problems all the time. That's my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the thing that we see a lot too, is the turkey that's got long spurs is typically the turkey that is not.
Yeah, he's like a subordinate bird or a non-social bird or whatever.
Yeah, and he's got long spurs because he's not fighting wearing them down.
He's way off to the side, satellite, and wants
yeah.
nothing to do with it.
I think the only turkey that I've ever seen with long spurs that got shot, called in and shot up coming to a decoy was that one that I killed when I was a kid behind my house.
Yeah.
All the other ones are something.
With a sonic dome.
Yeah, and a freaking pretty boy, pretty girl set of decoys and a
Makes me laugh because I can think of myself at 14 years old or whatever you were, hunting by myself.
Dick Kirby boat paddle. But there was, to my knowledge, really no other adult gobblers around. He was just kind of the only one there, so he wasn't fighting. He was the dominant.
Those are serious. You should see those if you haven't. Those are like inch and 15, 16s.
Yeah,
that's bleeding.
it's
really like long. Heavy Osceola kind of spurs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad's got that bird we call it the ghost, chased him forever. And he was one of those birds that we even tried to, and what made my dad end up killing him was, like you said, woodsmanship. You got to go where he wants to be. He was that bird that he wouldn't come. He'd gobble at you all day long, but he wouldn't come closer than probably 100 yards.
He ain't breaking his bubble.
Nope, no reason to.
No.
He was king shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he did. He gobbled and they came to him. And the day dad ended up killing him, the hens drug him through this little pinch point of a field, and he didn't even know he rolled them. You know, he just knew that bird was roosted with those hens anymore. He wasn't sure if it was him or not. Freaking just under 2 1/8, between 2 and 2 1/8. Freaking, you look at those, dude, and it's like you think you got 1.5 inches and that's something. You put that 2-inch line.
Were they black or white or pearls?
Black tipped, just about all ivory up to the tip.
Oh, pearlish. Did he go on the wall?
Oh, got the hooks, but
Dad didn't give a shit.
he does. I don't think he's got a single fan, dude.
Yeah.
Of all the birds he's killed, and he's killed dozens of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a bunch of spurs, but never talking beards. He's got like tons of beards, but
mice chewed him up a little.
Mice chewed him up out in the barn one winter. Took like all of them. He had like freaking 20, 30 of them. The spurs. They hauled the spurs away. Yeah, but
darn mice.
Goddamn mice, dude. Getting my chicory. Mice love chicory too. Don't leave your chicory out in the garage. They fucking ravage that shit.
I found out that they really like big time clover.
Yep. Anything they
covered
get
around
into.
in my garage.
Yep. Well, I think that was a hell of an episode, guys. What's what do you think, the most important tidbit that you can give a beginning, new, or even experienced turkey hunter? What's your number one piece of advice?
Let the gobbler tell you what he wants. Be patient. Sit there. If he answers you once or twice and you don't have a whole bunch of turkeys to go chase, don't take that run and gun tactic to heart. If he answers you a couple times, he will eventually be back to check that area out. But you got to be sitting there to witness it.
Wait him out.
That's how I started turkey hunting when I was a kid. I was taught if he answers you 3 times, doesn't matter if it's an hour apart, he will be back through typically before noontime. You'll hear him coming from a distance. If he breeds off those hens, he will be back to look around in that area. And if you're sitting there and you give him a little chirp and he really wants to find you, he's going to come in and find the beat of that 1187, hopefully. Hopefully it's not some other crappy shotgun.
Yeah, real one.
Or just go turkey hunting.
Just go turkey
A
hunt.
free shotgun.
Yeah.
Go turkey hunting.
I won one the other night.
Listen to the turkeys. Learn how to talk to the turkeys, or just learn what the turkeys do and try to.
Number one lesson:
Just hunt with a turkey.
hunt them in the fall.
Yeah.
Hunt them in the fall a little bit. Even if you don't kill one, just get near a flock in the fall at fly down and just listen to them and watch them and see what they do. You'll learn the most turkey vocalizations and acts and fighting and much more than you will in the spring. It's much more enjoyable.
Guys say that to me all the time, and I'm just like, you probably never heard in your entire life that you're an idiot and been proven so completely wrong that you realize that you are an idiot. But they'll say, I want to hunt turkeys when they're gobbling. And I'm like, you have no idea what hard gobbling turkeys even sound like if you haven't hunted them in the fall and winter. Like you understand calling one turkey in that's gobbling at you, what that's like. But you've never experienced 20, 30, all the way up to 70, 80 turkeys coming gobbling at you. And you get that in the fall and the winter. And just because you go hunt them, like lots of guys deer hunt, pass deer or whatever, like you don't have to go shoot something if you don't want to. You take your gun and you go in the woods fall turkey hunting. That doesn't mean that like if you see a turkey, you have to shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can just go turkey hunting, and if you feel like you have an opportunity and you want to shoot at something, you go shoot it. But like, go try it and see what it's like, and maybe make it a point to kill a longbeard in the fall. Like put your mind to it, set a goal for yourself, and go try to do it, and see what it's all about. And maybe you'll learn something that you never knew. And it'll change your entire perspective about what you think you already know everything about. Because you definitely, even me, don't know everything about it. And I learn something every time I go or see something new. A lot less frequently now than when I was a kid, but you definitely can see some crazy things by just going and doing it. Hunt different states, hunt different subspecies, hunt different parts of the country, hunt with different guys that know a lot about what they're doing in those particular areas. And you'll learn a lot more about hunting what you hunt here by hunting turkeys in Texas or Oklahoma or Nebraska, or, you think they're just a stupid farm turkey or whatever, but you get to go and sit and see sometimes 300-400 longbeards strutting around in a cattle pasture, and you never would be able to see that here. And listen to them and see how they operate and what they do. And you'll learn a lot about what goes on here that you don't see because it's visible there.
Fox says, who in their right mind wakes up and says, I'm going to bear hunt in the Finger Lakes and finds success? Straight Ned, Cambodia rope out there in Snyder territory. Yeah. He loves that. My whole bear story about how I was actually bear hunting around home and I actually shot one while I was straight up bear hunting. It just melts his brain. He's like, you really are shot, dude.
It's
like we're gonna go out and we're only gonna hunt banded longbeards. We're only gonna hunt bears today, or I'm gonna go crow hunting today. Even though it's goose season, I'm only shooting crows. You guys go do what you want.
Yep.
Like what people have to understand is that that's part of like the New York, our hunting culture, which is very rich and vibrant here, and there's a lot of people that are in it, and you don't ever hear anybody that's like proclaims themselves as I'm a bear hunter. So nobody thinks of it like, oh, I'm going bear hunting. It's I'm going deer hunting. If a bear comes by, I'm going to shoot it. In Maine, they go bear hunting. If a deer comes by, they shoot it. So everybody's about bear hunting. That's their own little society, their own little hunting community, and how it's knitted and woven together. So here in New York, we talk about going spring turkey hunting, or spring's coming where everybody's going turkey hunting or thinking about turkey hunting, talking about turkey hunting. And what people have to understand is that it's that way because that's just what you were growing up being told. That's the way that it is. Like boys drive pickup trucks and chicks drive SUVs. Like the guy driving an SUV is broke or, hasn't made it because he doesn't have that's the way that society here has woven itself together. But you have to understand that that's just the constraint we put on ourselves. That's not really the way that it is. And that fall turkey hunting, it can be just as much fun or more exciting and even more, even more like interactive because you can have a dog. You can train a dog how to break flocks of turkeys, and then you sit where it breaks them, call them back together. You hear every sound that they make, and it's a ton of fun. And you got a dog, and you're into it. And you take your buddies, and you see how that. Back in the day, a lot of the guys here that hunted turkeys, that's how they did it. There's still a few guys that do it, but it's not as widespread as it used to be. And that you just know you're only as strong as what you've been told your whole life. And if you go and do things that are unconventional and try it out, you might find something that you never even knew existed that you love a lot more than what you've been told is the way that you do something.
Yeah, don't be scared to try something new.
Yeah. It's a ton of fun. It's for everybody. Kids love it. I shot my first turkey in the fall. I don't know when you shot your 1st turkey, but both of us shot our first. For years, that's all whenever I killed a turkey, it was in the fall. I never even killed one in the spring. So it's a lot more fun for kids. You hear more, see more. Like, that's the biggest thing they talk about baiting different places. Well, baiting is a super beneficial tool, because especially for young hunters, because you can put it there and you can almost guarantee that without being able to invest the work into doing food plots, habitat management, you can take a kid out and he can see something. Whether he shoots something is a different story. Whether he kills a big buck over it is a different story. But at least you're going to see wildlife, even if it's just squirrels, come into the bait pile, and it's interesting to them, more interesting than the tablet or whatever. Yeah. So being involved in going and finding ways to make things fun and enjoyable and trying things out that are different. It sucks if you got, if you deer hunting, because you are running around in the woods, but state land and stuff like that, there's fall turkeys on those, and guarantee you nobody else is hunting them.
There ain't a damn soul touching them.
There's nobody walking around.
That's where I did most of my fall turkey killing, is some of those big woods, state lands. You got the whole place to yourself. I mean, yeah, you have some fun.
You get deer hunters.
Some fun pissing off some bow hunters, but boy, you can get into a flock of birds and they don't know hunting to nothing.
Yeah. Oh shit.
More Cambodia kind of stuff for fox.
Oh yeah, dude.
Or go down and book a hunt with Pete Clare and hunt with the turkey dogs down in Candor at Turkey Trot and see a whole circus that you never.
Ryan wants me to write a book on specifically hunting hooks. I told him I ain't doing that yet. Maybe down the road. This is it. I got my own ways of doing that, and I don't want to give it all up. Because the number one thing is, if you want to ruin a good thing, have too much human influence on it.
Yeah.
That's why we're sitting here. Human 100%. Influence, boys.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding, man. Well, guys, appreciate you having us tonight. I'm sure we'll hang out and shoot the breeze after it, but thanks for having us. And where can everybody find Cartel?
You can Google us and shop it on the online store. So it'd be, the actual address would be cartel-custom-calls.myshopify.com, or you can just punch it into Google, or it's on the bio of any of our social media pages. And you can, on most of them, you can find a promo code, or you can use Bangland and you get 10% off. Free shipping over $100, and there'll be an Easter special coming out here within the next couple days.
And also check us out on YouTube, and don't be afraid to watch the Just Hunt Club channel and the Untamed. They're all running our calls. So is Roy Holford on YouTube. They're all running our products, all good content. Check it out. Yeah, watch turkey hunting as much as you can, because I definitely do.
We got guys all the time asking for calls, files, or sound samples, and all those YouTube videos, all that social media content that we put out. You can hear us running the calls, and it's all up there.
Oh yeah, man.
We don't give you cell phone in a tree call files. You got to watch the hunt.
Yeah,
and see how they work right there in front of your face, and that's the best way to listen to those calls.
Yeah.
To see what rope's interaction with that call specifically is. And boom.
And different tactics of using different calls that sound different, switching them up so you sound like multiple turkeys in the flock.
Breen, rip a tune on a 4-reed for the boys back home. You got a paint over there?
No, but I got a Santa Muerte.
Mostowski says, welcome to the show. I brought that chair for you, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Dave showed up. I figured you could lay back in that and bend frames for hours.
Yeah.
Not my primary choice, but works.
Man. Just stop playing games.
This is Trent's favorite call, not necessarily mine. It's more of a left side air channel call.
I like pot call playing.
Mm-hmm.
That's that black iodized aluminum.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's triple cocoa.
cocoa stick.
Cocoa stick, cocoa pot, black anodized.
Mm-hmm.
Not good.
I don't fucking murder.
Bad.
Oh, yeah. Have a good one, folks. My
thanks
phone
for
is
tuning
about
in.
to die.
Get yourself some Cartel calls before they're gone.
I gotta have a meeting with Cossack and Dave.
There we go.